not a test.
Hello, 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 and welcome to the City Council Forum on Culture and Arts for Brooklyn Districts 33, 35, 36, and 39. We know that there's a lot going on and that we're all navigating a lot. So we just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us. We know time is one of the most precious resources we can allocate, and we appreciate you spending that time to be with us. I am Melanie Green. I'm an artist and also director of programs at New Yorkers for Culture and Arts. We are a cultural advocacy organization working to ensure a vibrant future for culture and arts for all New Yorkers. I'm coming to you from former Choctaw and Chickamatcha land. I am a Black woman with curly tendrils cascading from the crown of my head, and I use she, her pronouns. I should also say I'm wearing a seersucker dress. So tonight we have ASL interpretation, as well as closed captioning available in the Zoom platform. So if you are in the Zoom with us, then you can click on the CC at the bottom of the frame and have access to that. Now the chat is open for folks as well as YouTube on the live stream. Hey, YouTube people. We ask that you be kind and no hate speech in the chat, please. Now, what we do want to support is that you share thoughts, impressions, and ideas that you may have on the topics discussed here tonight. I want to give a big, giant shout out to the New Yorkers for Culture and Arts team who has helped organize this event, including Lori Berg, Lucy Sexton, Tara Sheena, Regine Peters, our producing partners, SFG, and all of the participating organizations who have supported this event. We will list those organizations in the chat. So this evening, we have the amazing Amy Andrier and David Roberts, who will be moderating for us. Now, Amy is the Executive Director and Chief Curator of MoCADA, and David is the Executive Director of 651 Arts. Now, I know that you all are so excited to hear from these candidates in Brooklyn, but before we do that, we want you to be aware that New Yorkers for Culture and Arts, we're continuing to host City Council forums this week, as well as next month, and we've had some we've hosted in the past, and you can go to our YouTube channel if you want to see any archives of that. Now, without further ado, I will pass it over to Amy and David. Welcome.
Hello, and welcome to the City Council Forum for Brooklyn Districts 33, 35, 36, and 39 on Culture and Arts, hosted by New Yorkers for Culture and Arts. My name is Amy Andrier, and I'm thrilled to be here with my colleague, David Roberts. Tonight, we're going to begin with an accessibility check-in and give you a brief visual description. I'm a Black woman with a short afro, wearing a black and gray dress, gold earrings in front of a white wall with dark wood paneling. My pronouns are she and her. I'd also like to acknowledge that I'm currently on lands historically inhabited by the Lenape tribe, a region currently known as New York City, my hometown. David?
Thank you, Amy. For my accessibility check, I am a cisgender, able-bodied Black man. I have a shaved head and short cropped beard. I am wearing a light blue Oxford and a dark blue blazer. And in the background, there are various masks from the African diaspora, an ivy and a vase. I am zooming in from Lenape-Hokan territory as well. And I will add that my pronouns are he, him. The COVID-19 pandemic has disproportionately impacted cultural organizations, cultural workers, and artists. Prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, the arts and culture sector generated $110 billion in economic activity in New York City, with a workforce of over 300,000 people. For the city to bounce back and to improve by addressing persistent inequities, it needs a strong cultural sector. And today, we're excited to hear from City Council candidates about their views on the arts, culture, and our city.
This evening, we will ask Brooklyn City Council candidates questions from the New Yorkers for Culture and Arts candidate questionnaire. They will have 90 seconds to respond. And if time permits, we will ask a follow-up question with each candidate.
If you'd like to know more about the candidates' response to the questionnaire, they will be posted on the New Yorkers for Culture and Arts website. The URL will be posted in the chat.
And the chat is now open. We invite candidates to converse with guests, and we encourage our guests to drop their follow-up questions in the chat. While we can't promise to get to every question posed, we encourage the discussion and we'll be monitoring it both on Zoom and on YouTube.
Please be respectful with all comments you post. We also want to let you know that the order of the candidates and the questions they will be asked have been chosen at random to ensure fairness. Okay, so let's get started. Amy, over to you.
Thank you. Tonight, we'll kickstart the forum with District 33, which includes the neighborhoods of Borum Hill, Brooklyn Heights, Vinegar Hill, Brooklyn Navy Yard, downtown Brooklyn, Dumbo, Greenpoint, and Williamsburg. Welcome candidates Lincoln Ressler, April Sembuen, Stu Sherman, Sabrina Gates, Victoria Cambranes, Elizabeth Adams, and Ben Solitaire. Candidates, I'll read a brief overview data point followed by a question, which will also be visible on the screen for those of you who are watching from home. So let's begin. Candidate Ressler. Data shows that neighborhoods with cultural assets have improved outcomes in everything from education and aging to community well-being and safety. Yet nonprofit cultural organizations often lack resources for long-term stable locations in the city's fluctuating real estate market. And artists and cultural workers need affordable live workspaces. What is your plan for creating healthy, stable communities? How do you envision enlivening vacant commercial and city-owned spaces?
Right. Thank you, Amy and David, and everyone for having me tonight. My name is Lincoln Ressler. I use the pronouns he, him. I'm a cis white male, able-bodied man, I guess male. I'm standing live on Cranberry Street in front of a brick gate. And look, New York City will be back when the arts are back. And the arts and cultural sector is the single thing that distinguishes our city from everywhere else. So I have every confidence that our city is going to come back strong from this pandemic. But we as a city need to do more. The city of New York needs to do more to support arts and cultural organizations and the artists that make our city great. We put out a plan called Lower NYC Rent that would drive down rents in longstanding vacant residential and commercial spaces to make them more affordable to working families and to entrepreneurs. It is a new, compelling, viable proposal comprised of city and state legislation. Julia Salazar, state senator, and Emily Gallagher, assembly member, have agreed to sponsor it at the state level. And it's a way to take advantage of the significant now vacancy rates in our residential buildings, in our larger residential buildings, and in our commercial storefronts. The city of New York needs to step up and commit to our arts organizations because we have safer neighborhoods, we have better educational outcomes, we have higher rates of civic engagement when we have strong community-based arts organizations. And if I'm lucky enough to serve on the city council, I'm gonna do everything I can to elevate and fund our arts organizations across the 3030.
Thank you, candidate Ressler. Let's talk about education, candidate Sembuen. The city has a qualified legion of teaching artists, totaling over 4,500 educators. Yet 67% of New York City principals stated that funding for the arts is generally insufficient. Currently, New York City does not meet state mandates for arts in every public school. Yet arts and education in schools has been shown to improve academic and social emotional outcomes for students, especially when provided as an integrated part of the curriculum. What is your plan for the city school system, and what is your vision for the role of arts in education?
That was for me, April Sembuen.
Yes.
Sorry. Hi, everyone. I'm April Sembuen, cisgender. I go by the pronouns she, her, and I'm a female. I have black hair, slightly tan with, I'm currently wearing some lipstick, red lipstick, and I have a white background in my kitchen. I'm a mom to 2 young kids, ages 6 and 3. Arts education is one of my top priorities. I wish I had it when I was younger, coming from low income, and it was in a Title I school. We were not afforded that opportunity. And I wanna make sure that that opportunity is passed on to my children and all the other 1 million kids that are in New York City public school education. The role that arts education plays in our children's lives intersect with so many topics such as math, social studies, and to literacy. It's been proven that arts is a way to get children to express their emotions. their culture, and also connect with current events. For example, you can use art to learn about economics, and arts that can help children learn to love and read and become lifelong learners. My son goes to a public school, and my daughter, like I said, is just enrolled into UPK for this fall. I am committed to every single family and to our schools, and to make sure to hold the mayor accountable that we fully fund arts education in our schools. It's just what is required, and it should be a part of the curricula and not an extracurricular activity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Candidate Simblin. Candidate Sherman, let's change directions a bit. You're a legal aid attorney who provides legal assistance to those in New York City public hospitals. This past year has shown just how pressing an issue healthcare is for individual artists, culture workers, and small cultural groups without resources for major coverage plans. This impacts disabled workers, artists, organizations enormously. In addition, many people are experiencing disabilities after suffering with COVID. And in communities hardest hit by COVID, health outlets are closing. As an example, in Brownsville, Brooklyn, there has been a recent closure announcement of a longstanding family and women's health clinic. What is your plan to address the healthcare needs of the city's many communities? Okay, apologies there. Candidate Sherman is not here. Moving on to the next question. Candidate Gates, are you here?
I'm here.
Okay, just making sure. You've worked in the nonprofit sector, and let's continue to talk about COVID, the COVID crisis specifically. Arts and culture were the first to close, and much of the sector will be the last to reopen at full capacity. More than 50% of artists and culture workers remain unemployed. This is in a sector where workers are 3.6 times more likely to be self-employed, freelancers, gig workers, and mixed income earners. What is your plan for getting the city back to work, particularly in the hardest hit sectors? What kind of workforce development programs do you envision that will provide access to communities of color and people living with disabilities?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sabrina Gates. I go by the pronouns she or her. I am wearing a black sweater with a pink and black striped infinity shirt. I have an off-white background behind me. I am also wearing gold earrings, and I am caramel colored with my hair slicked back into a bun. That's a very good question. I myself have also been self-employed, so I understand many of the challenges that faced artists, gig workers, self-employed folks coming back, starting to try to find ways to come back from this pandemic. I think there's a number of things that we can do to address the problems, but the biggest thing is making sure that our small businesses and organizations have the support they need to not just continue their operations, but also bring their full workforce back. I am a big fan of Lift and Rise programs. And by that, I mean programs where we have an opportunity to forge partnerships between organizations that are larger, companies that are larger, so that they can help facilitate bringing those companies that need additional assistance on board, whether that's help applying to resources available to them, or providing infrastructure information as well. I think we have a crisis of information in the city. There are a lot of programs and opportunities available, but people don't have the ways to connect with them. And so for me, that's going to be a priority in terms of opening opportunity centers where people can walk in and get access to the information and basically have someone help hold their hands through some of the things they need to move the needle for themselves. In terms of workforce development, as I said, Lift and Rise. I think we need to build more partnerships with companies and organizations, large and small, that have been able to maintain themselves and able to bring other folks along to the process. I want to provide capital and subsidies for new businesses, particularly in neighborhoods that have been underserved in particular areas. I think that's a great opportunity to create additional work opportunities. There's so many things that we can do across the city, but I definitely agree with a lot of what's already been said. We do need the arts to come back. They are a source of hope and renewal for this city. We know that a good number of people in the tourism space rely on arts and industry to bring people to our doors. We need that, and so that's going to be a priority for me and my administration.
Thank you, Candidate Gates. Candidate Cambranes, let's talk about economic recovery. As of March 2021, just 4% of shuttered creative businesses have returned to normal operations. The federal relief offered by the Shuttered Venue Operators Grants will only help an estimated 10% of the creative economy. Micro businesses, i.e. the sole proprietor artists or small artist-led organizations, are particularly vulnerable. This is a huge loss for our city's economy, where the creative sector generates $110 billion in economic activity. Arts and culture have led recoveries in the past, enlivening the hollowed out industrial neighborhoods in the 70s and bringing people back downtown after 9/11. What do you foresee, Candidate Cambranes, is the role of creative economies in supporting economic recovery in New York City, particularly for communities most affected by environmental, housing, health instability due to COVID, including our aging, immigrant, and working class communities of color?
Thank you so much for that question. My name is Victoria Cambranes. I go by she, her pronouns. I am a cisgender Latina. I have a black blazer with a white men's t-shirt on, and my background is a avocado green wall, white door, and a cabinet of curiosities. To answer that question, having grown up in Greenpoint, which was a working class community of color for many generations. My parents are also both immigrants. I'm a first generation American. And I know how hard it was to see the working class fabric of the community and the cultural fabric of the community, our history, being frayed over the years due to the excesses of real estate profits and speculation in our district, which has been really hit hard by that. I also witnessed that artists, and truly when I was coming into my own as a young teenager, a young adult, artists moving into the neighborhood are what created space for enlightening the neighborhood, enriching the neighborhood, helping it to clean up, to grow, and to really bring a lot of life where there was a lot of destruction over the years. Our industrial toxic past had caused a lot of that. And so I really think that the arts are truly going to be another vehicle if we allow it to grow and if we fund it properly and stand behind the arts and culture, that we have the opportunity to bring back what makes New York so special, what makes Brooklyn so special, what makes District 33 so special as well.
Thank you, Candidate Cambranes. Candidate Adams, one of your goals is to combat the school to prison pipeline. Let's talk about the inverse. Educational programs for incarcerated and formerly incarcerated populations that include sustained arts programs has led to improvements in managing emotional states, building confidence and communication skills, and also increasing civic engagement. What are your plans for supporting incarcerated and formerly incarcerated New Yorkers?
Hi, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Adams. My pronouns are she and hers. I am a white woman wearing a navy blue blazer with glasses and a background of a white wall with a hanging green plant. So I have been involved in working with a number of organizations really led by people who are directly impacted by our carceral system. A number of formerly incarcerated leaders in our city during the Close Rikers campaign, and working with a lot of folks in the community really laying out how our city is a cliff for folks. When people are released from state prisons or jails, there is no support, there's no housing support, there's no programmatic support, and people are really failed by our government in saying, you deserve to have the support back in your community. It was why I was very actively involved in working on the Fair Chance for Housing Act, which would remove housing barriers for people around background checks who, have gone through the carceral system or, arrest or looking for housing in our city, because housing is a huge barrier for people being able to get back into their community when it comes from leaving the carceral system. So that's kind of the place that I have focused a lot of work on. I think when it comes to education and arts programming, the arts and music and dance are so essential to our well-being, to our emotional well-being, to our social emotional learning and care. And
thank you, Candidate Adams. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Moving on to the last candidate of District 33. Candidate Solitaire, one of your priorities is providing accessible housing specifically for seniors. But data shows that neighborhoods with cultural assets have improved outcomes in everything from education and aging to community well-being and safety. Yet nonprofit cultural groups often lack resources for long-term stable income, long-term stable locations in the city's fluctuating real estate market. And artists and cultural workers need affordable live workspaces. What is your plan for creating healthy, stable communities? And how do you envision enlivening vacant commercial and city-owned spaces?
Hi, thank you. Yeah, my name is Benjamin Solitaire, cis white male with a checked pronouns of he and him, a checked sort of blue and beige shirt, blue wall behind me with some photographs of friends on the Lenape land here in Brooklyn. I think that I am a candidate with an arts background. I started out in the theater as a lighting designer for many years and then went on to producing. My father was a painter for his whole life. So the arts are deeply ingrained in my life, still as a member of the public works program with the public theater. So I think that they are crucial to a healthy, stable community. We need to, we have so much space. We have a lot of vacant city and commercial private space that we need to make it, as a city, we need to review every piece of land we have, every building, and work with the community to what uses would best serve that community. Is it a garden? Is it a community center? Is it housing? Or what? But we have to work with the community and not just assume that we need to build on every piece of land. When it comes to private commercial properties, we need to make it profitable for them, either through tax incentives and subsidies, to let it be used by arts spaces, arts providers, and the community as well. So I think we need to make a two-pronged approach, and we need to make sure that there are plenty of places there that exist that make them accessible to everybody.
Thank you, Candidate Solitaire. And now, thank you for the candidates from District 33. I'll now pass it to David Roberts, who will be speaking with candidates from District 35.
Thank you, Amy, and thank you, candidates from 33. I would now like to welcome the candidates from District 35. The candidates are Curtis Harris, Michael Hollingsworth, Crystal Hudson, Regina Kinsey, Deirdre Levy, and Hector Robinson. And I believe that we do not have Regina Kinsey here. But this first question is for Curtis Harris. Candidate Harris, as we heard earlier, educational programs for incarcerated and formerly incarcerated populations that include sustained arts programs have led to improvements in managing emotional states, building confidence and communication skills, and increasing civic engagement. Are you here with us? There he is. Hello, Mr. Harris. So our question is, what are your plans for supporting incarcerated and formerly incarcerated New Yorkers?
Well, thank you very much for this forum, and I welcome everyone here. My name is Curtis Harris. I'm cisgen. I'm wearing a blue blazer. I'm Black male with glasses, with a tightly cropped gray beard and short haircut. My background is basically a gray ceiling. I think that's what you see. In answer to your question, I am the executive director and founder of Green Earth Poets Cafe and Green Earth Poetry Theater. I am the arts and culture candidate running in the 35th Council District. I'm also the son of a jazz artist. My dad passed away 3 years ago, and at age 87. And so arts and culture is in my DNA. So in answer to your question, my plans for supporting the incarcerated and formerly incarcerated is as follows. As the founder of Green Earth Poets Cafe, we have been active as an example in Rikers Island Prison since 2014. There we brought poets, singers, dancers with us with our program called No More Silent Voices. We visited facilities such as RNDC or GRVC, Otis Bantam, Rose Singer, and with our poetry writing and performing program called No More Silent Voices. We encourage artists, poets, dancers, and singers to join us on a Saturday morning from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m., where we engage the inmates. Our program helps them accept responsibility for their thoughts, words, and actions. After the artists perform, and when inmates are inspired, we allow them to write and perform with us. We have worked with inmates at Rikers Island, the Brooklyn House of Detention, and Crossroads Juvenile Detention Center in Brownsville, Brooklyn. Green Earth Poets Cafe has also worked with Neon Arts. Neon Arts, as you know, is a probation program that uses arts organizations to work with at-risk youth.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Candidate Harris. We do have to keep the time. Thank you so much for that answer.
Thank you.
Our next question is for Crystal Hudson. In the COVID crisis, arts and culture were the first to close, and much of the sector will be last to reopen at full capacity. More than 50% of artists and culture workers remain unemployed. This in a sector where workers are 3.6 times more likely to be self-employed, freelancers, gig workers, and mixed income earners. What is your plan, Candidate Hudson, for getting the city back to work, particularly in its hardest hit sectors? What kind of workforce development programs do you envision that would provide access to communities of color and people with disabilities?
Thank you. My name is Crystal Hudson. I am a cisgender Black woman with curly black hair atop my head. And in my background, I have a bookshelf and some plants and a piece of artwork on the wall. Thank you for that question. I think, as we plan for a just economic recovery, we know that an economy that goes back to normal is not good enough. And arts and cultural workers have been some of the hardest hit by the closure of local businesses and industries. And so we have to come back with stronger worker protections. There was an analysis of 2018 workforce and employment data that showed us that employment and wages experienced by Black New Yorkers were found widespread across the city. And we know that Black folks here and really everywhere face disparities from compensation to, health disparities, as we've seen with COVID, and everything in between. And specifically, Black New Yorkers hold a shockingly small share of the jobs in a wide array of industries, including creative fields like arts and culture and entertainment. And so it's important to me that we actually utilize or follow the recommendations of the New York Workforce Recovery Strategy Group in order to ensure that we are prioritizing Black and communities of color and marginalized communities in how we come back, focusing on employment programs that reach workers where they are, regardless of background, that we're training people to take on the jobs that they want to have, that we're also employing the people who face the greatest barriers to unemployment, like Black trans women and incarcerated or formerly incarcerated folks, and also focusing our recovery efforts on nonprofits and local small businesses. And
Thank you so much. Thank you, Candidate Hudson. Appreciate that answer. We will go on to our next candidate now, Michael Hollingsworth. For Michael Hollingsworth, as of March 2021, just 4% of shuttered creative businesses have returned to normal operations. The federal relief offered by the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant will only help an estimated 10% of the creative economy. Micro businesses, for example, the sole proprietor artist or small artist-led organizations, are particularly vulnerable. This is a huge loss for our city's economy, where the creative sector generates more than $110 billion in economic activity. Arts and culture have led recoveries in the past, enlivening the hollowed out industrial neighborhoods in the 70s and bringing people back downtown after 9/11. So I have my question ready for you. Michael, are you there? No. Okay, so I think we are going to move on to candidate Deidre Levy. Deidre, are you here?
I am here.
Okay, I have a different question for you. So healthcare is a pressing issue for individual artists, culture workers, and small cultural groups without resources or major coverage plans. This impacts disabled artists, workers, and organizations enormously. In addition, many people are experiencing disabilities after suffering with COVID. And in communities hardest hit by COVID, health outlets are closing. For instance, we heard earlier, in Brownsville and Brooklyn, there have been recent closure announcement of a longstanding family and women's health clinic. Our question for you is, what is your plan to address the healthcare needs of the city's many communities?
Thank you again for having me. My name is Deirdre Levy. I am cisgendered, mixed race woman living in Lenape land in Brooklyn. In my apartment, I am sitting on a couch and I have some books behind me. I think that with the pandemic, we've seen a lot of healthcare workers and a lot of folks been vastly affected by this pandemic. And I would want to make sure that we can have access to healthcare. We've had this issue even before the COVID-19 pandemic, but I think that if folks need healthcare, I think that service needs to be provided to them, especially in emergencies. So I'm all for ensuring that all folks have access to healthcare. During the pandemic, I started an organization called Project MoCADA, where we were delivering meals to the frontline workers. And I think that, with everything that's changed and everything that's happened, we really need to invest in ensuring that our hospitals are fully staffed, that we're investing in our healthcare services to provide for the greater good of our community. So thank you so much for asking that question. And thank you again for having me here tonight.
Thank you so much, candidate Levy. Our next candidate up is Hector Robinson. Is Hector here?
Yes, I'm here.
Wonderful. Let's get you on camera if we can. I'll start the question. Data shows that neighborhoods with cultural assets have improved outcomes in everything from education and aging to community well-being and safety. Yet nonprofit cultural groups often lack resources for long-term stable locations in the city's fluctuating real estate market. And artists and cultural workers need affordable live workspaces. Our question for you is, what is your plan for creating healthy, stable communities? How do you envision enlivening vacant commercial and city-owned spaces?
Thanks for that question. My name is Hector Robertson, and I am a longtime resident of Brooklyn in Crown Heights. I'm sitting at my desk with a white background, a window, there's a clock on the wall, and I am an African-American male. Obviously, in this city, we've missed a lot of opportunities in how to create different type of opportunities in the environment. We need to work towards environmental justice that would involve people, everybody in this city, regardless of color, national origin, or even income. I think that we have missed this opportunity many, many times. And I think that this virus and this experience in this city really afford us an opportunity to start all over again. There should be equal access to decision-making process when it comes to the environment, especially when it relates to communities. These residents of the communities they need to be the first one that actually can tell the city and elected officials exactly what is it that they need and what is it that is going to make communities like theirs work. So in order for the community to have a healthy environment in which people should live and work, everybody in this city has the right to actually voice their opinion. They need to have a voice within city government that actually will help them make sure that they're living in a just environment that allows them to thrive within their own issues and within their own communities. Thanks for that question.
Thank you so much, Candidate Robinson. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
That does it for District 35 candidates. I am going to pass it on to Amy, and we will move on to District 36.
Thank you, David. District 36, which includes neighborhoods of Northern Crown Heights and Bed-Stuy, welcome candidates Chi Osei and Robert Waterman. Let's begin with candidate Osei. Can we explore creative economies? You know, I was a friend of your dad's actually, and we talked about this a lot during our source days. As of March 2021, just 4% of shuttered creative businesses have returned to normal operations. The federal relief offered by the shuttered venue operators grants will only help an estimated 10% of the creative economy. Micro businesses, i.e. the sole proprietor artists or small artist-led organizations, are particularly vulnerable. This is a huge loss for our city's economy, where the creative sector generates about 110 billion in economic activity. Arts and culture have led recoveries in the past, enlivening out the hollowed out industrial neighborhoods in the 70s and bringing back people back downtown after 9/11. What do you foresee is the role of creative economies in supporting economic recovery in New York City, particularly for communities most affected by environmental, housing, and health instability due to COVID, including our aging, immigrant, and working class communities of color? Candidate Osei?
Hi, how are you?
Hi, how are you? Did you hear the question? Would you like me to repeat the question for you?
Oh, was that me that was getting a question asked?
Yes, that was for you.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I thought we were starting at District 36 at 6:50, but my apologies. Could you repeat the question?
Sure, no worries. Sorry about that. I'll read the data point first, and then I'll go into the question. As of March 2021, just 4% of shuttered creative businesses have returned to normal operations.
Mhm.
The federal relief offered by shuttered venue operators grants will only help an estimated 10% of the creative economy. Micro businesses, i.e. the sole proprietor artists or small artist-led organizations are particularly vulnerable. This is a huge loss for our city's economy, where the creative sector generates 110 billion in economic activity. Arts and culture have led recoveries in the past, such as enlivening the hollowed out industrial neighborhoods in the 1970s and bringing back people to downtown after 9/11. What do you foresee is the role of creative economies in supporting economic recovery in New York City, particularly for communities most affected by environmental, housing, and health instability due to COVID, including our aging, immigrant, and working class communities of color?
Thank you so much for having me here, and thank you for that question. My name is Chio Say. I'm a candidate running to represent the 36th Council District here in Bed-Stuy in North Crown Heights. The creative economy is New York. It's the background that I'm come from. I come from the freelancers background, and I know freelancers make up about 33% of the working population here in Brooklyn alone. Yet when it comes to talk about relief for small businesses, our unconventional small businesses or businesses that aren't brick and mortar, like our artists and our creatives, are often left out of that conversation, even though they add an enormous amount to our New York State and New York City economy. We're going to have to aid our creatives, aid our artists in any way, shape, or form in order to rebuild our economy as a whole. I believe that there are numerous freelancers and creatives and artists that live in my district. If we are going to rebuild New York's economy, we will have to tend to those people, to those workers. In terms of access to relief and getting back to the way that we were before, something that I think should just be at the forefront of all of our electeds and people running for office is pushing that all of our workers and all of the people here in New York should get vaccinated. Our campaign has set up a vaccination program where we've aided over 1,000 people here in the district to get vaccination appointments. And I'm hoping that by the time I step into office that the majority of the district and hopefully New York City is vaccinated so that our creative and artist class,
Thank you,
working class.
Candidate Osei. I'm sorry, we have to mind the clock.
Cool.
But I will circle back with follow-up questions shortly for both candidates. Candidate Waterman, are you here? Candidate Waterman? Okay, I will ask a follow-up question for you, Candidate Osei. The University of Penn's social impact of the Arts Project, SIAP 2017 report shows neighborhoods with vibrant cultural assets see an increase in stronger community and civic engagement, better health, schooling, personal security, and economic revitalization. In the wake of all the injustices that have come to bear this past year, George Floyd's murder, the exponential rise of violence against the AAPI community, and the disproportionate impact of COVID-19 on BIPOC communities. How would you address the security and protection of cultural assets in communities of color, many of whom were struggling to survive before the pandemic?
Yeah, the city should be in the business of offering low interest loans and other financial tools to help artists, cooperatives buy spaces, especially in communities of color. Talking about how our work as artists and people that work in the culture field, so you're very in tune with this community, then one of the best but least talked about aspects of the New Deal in the 1930s was the government paying unemployed artists to create art as stimulus. Art creates a thriving community, and it's often neglected when it comes to helping our people, or when it comes to something that we should invest in. My plan for implementing arts both in our schools and with my community is something that isn't of an afterthought. For example, currently in our campaign, we are working with the current council member on putting forward open culture locations so that we can get open culture set up here in the district and provide our artists and our creatives a space here in District 36. In terms of education curriculum,
thank you, Candidate Osei. I'm sorry to cut you off.
By the way, I did get an email that said that my district started at 6:50. Was there?
Well, there were a couple of candidates who did not appear today, so we are moving forward, which is why I asked you a follow-up question as well, because there was time to ask you a secondary question.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No worries. Sorry for being tardy.
No, you're fine. Thanks to all the candidates who participated thus far, and for those of you who are watching with us on YouTube and on Zoom, we'll now have a 5-minute break, which will feature a cultural offering by music producer Kalenji, a song called Sims World. We'll be right back.
And that's what this is all about, right? Clothes, bankroll, you know what I'm saying?
We say it dead ass.
Word on the street, I'm a hanging with the in the projects. Tail on the barrel, keep quiet.
Okay.
And that's what this is all about, right? Clothes, bankroll, you know what I'm saying?
We say it dead ass.
Word on the street, I'm a hanging with the in the projects. Tail on the barrel, keep quiet.
Okay.
And that's what this is all about, right? Closed bankroll. You know what I'm saying?
We say it dead ass.
Word on the street, I'm hanging with the in the projects. Tail on the barrel, keep quiet.
Okay.
And that's what this is all about, right? Closed bankroll. You know what I'm saying?
We say it dead ass.
Word on the street, I'm hanging with the in the projects. Tail on the barrel, keep quiet.
Okay.
Hi, and welcome back. We are going to get started now with District 39. I just want to remind folks who are watching us via YouTube or Zoom that you can post questions in the chat. We may not get to all of them, but if we have extra time, we will pull some community questions out to ask each of the candidates. So starting with candidate Douglas Schneider. Are you here?
I am.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, I'm going to read a data point and then I'll ask you a question. In the COVID crisis, arts and culture were the first to close and much of the sector will be last to reopen at full capacity. More than 50% of artists and culture workers remain unemployed. This in a sector where workers are 3.6 times more likely to be self-employed, freelancers, gig workers, and mixed income earners. What is your plan for getting the city back to work, particularly in the hardest hit sectors? What kind of workforce development programs do you envision that would provide access to communities of color and people living with disabilities?
Well, thank you so much. I am Doug Schneider. I am a cis white male with wearing a pink checkered shirt. My pronouns are he and him. I am sitting in my office with a white background behind me with my children's paintings and drawings, my 7-year-old and my 3-year-old. You know, small businesses are the beating heart of our neighborhoods. As a small business owner myself and somebody who represents small businesses, I know how thin the line is between success, and failure. And so we need to reduce the burdens on our small businesses because they won't, otherwise they won't survive. We need to do the things like reducing the biggest liabilities that our businesses face. So, for example, for art venues, right? It's electricity, it's lighting, and so we need to work with the government and utilities to find a way to temporarily reduce the cost of utilities to help our small businesses stay open. It is vitally important that we get the arts back up and running because the arts are one of the biggest economic drivers of our city's economy. Why do people come to New York? They come to New York for Broadway. They come to New York for our museums, and that tourism goes far beyond just Broadway, just beyond theaters. It goes to our restaurants, our hospitality, our hotels. And so we really need to be doing everything we can to get the arts back up and running.
Thank you, Candidate Schneider. Jessica Simmons, Candidate Simmons, are you here? Hi. I will also give you a data point and follow up with a question. Data shows that neighborhoods with cultural assets have improved outcomes in everything from education and aging to community well-being and safety. Yet nonprofit cultural groups often lack the resources for long-term stable locations in the city's fluctuating real estate market. And artists and cultural workers need affordable live workspaces. What is your plan for creating healthy, stable communities? How do you envision enlivening vacant, commercial, and city-owned spaces?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm Jessica Simmons. I'm a cisgendered white woman. I have brown hair pulled back, wearing gold earrings, a black and white textiled shirt, and in my background is a brick wall. I myself am an educator with over 20 years experience, and I believe for our community to thrive, it needs to be a little less complicated. So when talking about education, I say you shouldn't have to be a former principal to navigate the system. So if what we need is to return to healthy, stable communities, what we really are thinking about is how do we get our businesses back where they were before the pandemic? And as some folks have said earlier, even better than that. It's distressing to walk in our community and see our businesses, particularly those owned by women and minorities, to be able to see that these businesses are closed and shuttered. When we think about bringing back our healthy and stable community, we need to be listening to our business owners to hear from them. What do they want? What are the restrictions that are helping them? What are the COVID restrictions that they need eased, so that we can work in partnership with our businesses to make sure that everyone has what they need to thrive in our community. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Candidate Simmons. I'm going to pass the mic to David, who will continue asking questions of the remaining candidates. David?
Thank you, Amy. And thank you, everyone who's joining us. And thank you for the candidates from District 39, Douglas Schneider, Jessica Simmons, Bridget Rain, Justin Krebs, Shahana Hanif, and Brandon West. I'm going to ask all the candidates to stay online with us. We might have some time for a follow-up or two for each of you. But first, we will do primary questions. And the next one is for Bridget Rain. Bridget, are you here and on camera?
Mute.
Oh, there, I can hear you.
You can hear me, but you can't see. Oh, now you can
there
see.
There you are.
Okay,
wonderful.
Hi.
Hello, Candidate Rain.
Hi, I'm Bridget Ryan.
Ryan, wonderful.
Yes, that's how I pronounce it. I'm Bridget Ryan.
Before you introduce yourself, let me pose the question, and you can use that time to both introduce yourself and do the question. Okay, thanks so much. And if we can get that question on the slide here from our team for Bridget Ryan. Here's the data point. The city has a qualified legion of teaching artists, totaling over 4,500 educators. Yet 67% of New York City principals stated that funding for the arts is generally insufficient. Currently, New York City does not meet state mandates for the arts in every public school. Yet arts education in schools has been shown to improve academic and social emotional outcomes for students, especially when provided as an integrated part of the curriculum. So the question is, what is your plan for the city's school system, and what is your vision for the role that arts education plays?
Okay, my name is Bridget Ryan. I go by she, her, and she's, hers. I want to tell you that I'm a teacher, and I've been a teacher for 10 years, and I've worked with the United Federation of Teachers 18 years at City Hall. I have very close ties with the arts. I was one of the people that got the Broadway League the funding for the $10 tickets for our students. I also worked alongside Jacques Dembois and his dance studio and to get the tap in schools. And I worked with that alongside Randy Weingarten, who was my supervisor. So this is a very key issue in my platform of education. As somebody who hopefully will be the education chair, I will be making sure that the funding source for the arts will be there in education. I'd like for big programs that deal with dance. The Jacques Zembois tap dance studio and ballet dance studio and the ballroom dancing was like humongous for our inner city schools. It brought people together, and then the final performance makes everybody happy. And I've witnessed it, and I witnessed it at Battery Park City. It was just incredible how much joy these parents had having to see their children do ballroom dance and do tap and ballet.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Can I just
Thank
finish?
you so much. Sure.
One more second.
Yes, go ahead.
One more
Let's give you
second.
10 more seconds.
Metropolitan Museum of Arts has an art program and has an art studio for students. We have to use that. The Brooklyn Museum has an art program and an art studio for the students. So I am in contact with those communities, and I would be able to bring forth them to our education program and work alongside the Department of Education and your organization to make sure it happens. Just wanted
Thank
to
you so much, Candidate Ryan. Please stay online. We might have some follow-up questions. We might have some additional time. Thank you so much for your answer. We will be moving on now to Justin Krebs. Candidate Krebs, welcome.
Hi there.
Hi, let me read you the data point and then I'll read you the question. As of March 2021, just 4% of shuttered creative businesses have returned to normal operations. The federal relief offered by the Shuttered Venue Operators Grants will only help an estimated 10% of the creative economy. Micro businesses, such as sole proprietor artists or small artist-led organizations, are particularly vulnerable. This is a huge loss for our city's economy, where the creative sector generates $110 billion in economic activity.
Monet.
Arts and culture have led recoveries in the past, enlivening the hollowed out industrial neighborhoods in the 1970s and bringing people back downtown after 9/11. So the question is, what do you foresee is the role of creative economies in supporting economic recovery in New York City, particularly for communities most affected by environmental, housing, and health instability due to COVID-19, including our aging, immigrant, and working class communities of color?
David, thanks for asking the question, and Amy for hosting. And I'm glad I got to be here for all the candidates. There's so much to talk about. My name is Justin Krebs. I'm a white, cis, straight, relatively tall, curly brown, ponytailed man with a background that looks like a basement because it's bedtime for my kids upstairs, and I'm lucky to have a basement to retreat to, something that a lot of artists actually wish they have and have created great work in. I'm running for city council in 39th district. In addition to being a longtime progressive political organizer, I have a background in the arts that makes this very personal. I'm one of the founders of the Tank Theater, which for 18 years has been presenting new work by emerging artists cross-discipline in a non-commercial way that has removed the financial barriers to creating new work, presenting new work, and enjoying new work in New York City. And the Tank presents and premieres more new work across disciplines: theater, film, comedy, art, dance, puppetry, poetry. Premieres more new work than any venue in the city. And I actually just signed an application for the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant just yesterday with our artistic director. I remain the board chair, and we have a tremendous team that has kept the Tank going. But this feels very personal because we don't know if we'll get that, and how do you keep it running? So we need to bring back our arts. It's not just what can the city do for the arts as a charity, it's how the arts are part of the engine of recovery for the city. Arts and culture make our city hum and make our city tick. It's why I've been writing about this and around big ideas to do this, and why 100 artists and entertainment professionals endorsed my campaign a couple of weeks ago. What we need to do is funnel more of the recovery money into supporting small, independent venues, independent artists, creative firms. And I think you look at the firms that are hit hardest. They're often the one with lowest capital. When I say firms, I mean organizations, groups, nonprofits. And the ones with lowest capital often are ones that are run by women, people of color, immigrant collectives, making sure that they can retain their physical space. Because actually we're at a moment where we have access to an opportunity to do some interesting things around physical space, to give them work, not only to present work, but create, rehearse, studio space, and so forth. And
thank you so much, Candidate Krebs. I do have to keep you to time just to be fair to the other candidates.
I appreciate it. I'm going to drop a lot of links. Thanks for the time and for the collaboration.
And stay online. I might have time for one additional follow-up for each of the candidates from District 39. But we're going to go on to what I believe is our final candidate, Shahana Hanif. Hi, Shahana. Welcome. Hello. Let me pose the data point for you, and then the question, and then you can introduce yourself. Healthcare is a pressing issue for individual artists, cultural workers, and small cultural groups without resources for major coverage plans. This impacts disabled artists, workers, and organizations enormously. In addition, many people are experiencing disabilities after suffering with COVID. And in communities hardest hit by COVID, health outlets are closing. For instance, in Brownsville in Brooklyn, there has been a recent closure announcement of a longstanding family and women's health clinic. The question is, what is your plan to address the healthcare needs of the city's many communities?
Thank you so much. Hi, friends. Good evening. I'm Shahana Hanif. I go by the pronouns she, her. I am a brown cis woman with gold eyeglasses and long black hair tied in a ponytail. I am wearing a yellow top and gold wide hoop earrings. I am in front of a white background smiling into the camera. So as an open mic performer and creator of the Muslim Writers Collective, I just first want to acknowledge how harshly New York City's cultural community has been decimated by the pandemic, and in particular, immigrant artists and immigrant-run organizations right here in the 39th have lost most, if not all, of their work. Healthcare is a human right, and we've got to make sure artists are covered. Employment status and salaries should not be the markers of what determine access to healthcare. And as you mentioned, over the last decade, we've seen a closure and consolidation of hospitals and community-based clinics, particularly impacting Black, brown immigrant communities. So it is high time we invest in inclusive and destigmatized language accessible care and the vitality of all New Yorkers, pass the New York Health Act, and fully fund public hospitals and programs like New York City Care so that we're reaching undocumented folks and lower income folks. And it's imperative that no one is denied care. And a big priority of mine is to make sure that we have adequate mental health services that also it reaches all New Yorkers.
Wonderful, thank you so much, candidate Hanif. And while I have you here, I'm going to ask you a community question, and it's actually from your district. From Gowanus. The community question coming in is, how will you support programming and capital for public housing community centers, and specifically Gowanus Houses Community Center, which the community has been fighting to repair and reopen?
Thank you so much. So we've got to make sure that our district office and as council member that I'm responsive to the needs of our NYCHA residents and of institutions like NYCHA that continue to be harmed and at risk by privatization. And it is imperative that we have arts education and arts programming that is reaching our NYCHA residents, but in particular youth and youth of color. So it's critical for me that I both fund organizations like Arts Gowanus, Arts and Democracy. I see Karen on the call, and I've been building in partnership for years to make sure that not only Gowanus, but other parts of the district that are lower income, like Kensington, have adequate community-rooted arts programming built by the people, not just by outsiders coming into our neighborhood, but by us being the leaders of what kind of programming we get to see.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, candidate Hanif. I appreciate your time. It does look like we have one other candidate who's shown up and is ready for us, candidate Brandon West. Are you here with us? Let's make sure you have your sound and your camera on. Okay, maybe not. We will we'll come back to that, but I do want to use this opportunity for the other candidates from 39. I'm going to go back to Douglas Schneider, if we can bring him online, and if you are ready and available. And I'm going to ask you a community question. Candidate Schneider?
Yeah, they're not, I can't, it's not letting me start the video.
Oh, we're going to have our technicians. There we go. Okay, wonderful. Thanks for joining me again. So this community question. Thank you for discussing arts in New York City and recognizing artists as a strong workforce. Artists suffered economically disproportionately since cultural tourism took over a decade to develop in Brooklyn. And Brooklyn is going to be the last to return. How do we bring visitors back to New York City?
Yeah, I think that, first and foremost, we have to get our venues back open. We have to make sure that not just Broadway, right, but off Broadway, off Broadway, our music venues, our bars, our jazz clubs, all get the support that they need to reopen. Because again, tourism is driven by the arts in this city, and so we need a real commitment from every level of government to both do what needs to be done to keep our physical buildings open, but also to support our artists so that they are around to do the work, to do the performing, to do the art, so that we have a fully functioning arts society here in New York City. I think one potential.
Thank you, candidate Schneider.
Thank you so much.
I'm going to ask if candidate Simmons is here, and I'm going to ask folks for this follow-up question, just to stick to 30 seconds if you can. I'm going to ask you the same question I asked earlier. How will you support programming and capital for public housing community centers?
Sure. I think it's so important that we are making sure that these places are fully funded. When I was a principal in the Brownsville community. And as you all may know, Brownsville is the highest density of public housing in the city. I think it might even be in the country. And so it was really key to build partnerships with the NYCHA buildings around my school to ensure that the students at our school had the resources and the community support that they needed, and to ensure that our school was a key part of the community. That's the same approach I would take as council person to ensure we're partnering with, building on the assets of the community, and then using our positionality and power to ensure that they're fully funded.
Thank you so much, candidate Simmons. Appreciate your extra time there. Candidate Brandon West has joined us. Welcome. I'm glad we got through that technical difficulty. Joining your other fellow candidates here in the 39th. Let me present a data point for you, and then I will ask you a question. Educational programs for incarcerated and formerly incarcerated populations that include sustained arts programs has led to improvements in managing emotional states, building confidence and communication skills, and increasing civic engagement. The question is, what are your plans for supporting incarcerated and formerly incarcerated New Yorkers?
Hello, thank you. It was good to get out of the attendees group. My name is Brandon West. I am African-American cis male. I am wearing a white shirt with a white and blue shirt in front of a white wall in my room. So this is an issue that's very important to me because I have spent several years working with the Parole Preparation Project to really get folks who are currently incarcerated and getting them home and getting prepared for life at home. So I've seen this from the inside, just from interacting with folks that have cared about upstate to get them reacclimated to life. And what we have is a system where we dehumanize people. So not only do we not have enough arts in our schools, but we also don't provide it for people throughout their life. So I think what's incredibly important is, I've seen the difficulty of reentry and people being able to acclimate to everyday life. So what we have to do is we have to support community-based organizations who work with incarcerated folks and formerly incarcerated. And this is funding that's very hard to find funding for. I've known nonprofits who have struggled to get funding to bring arts into our prisons and jails. And this is funding that as a council member, I would support in terms of discretionary funding, because it's incredibly important to not treat people as if they're not human and not give people access to things that are very important to everyday life. So this is something that I will find funding for and make sure that we're committed to being able to support programs like this. And I know a lot of organizations that do this work, and I think it does lead to better outcomes and leads to people feeling more whole over the long run.
Thank you so much, candidate West. We appreciate your time. We appreciate you joining your fellow candidates from the 39th. We are getting close to time, so I'm not going to be able to ask those follow-up questions from the others. I do want to ask Amy and Lucy to come back on screen with us, if we may. Hello, Lucy. Hello, Amy.
Hi, David. Thank you so much. Thanks to you and Amy so much for hosting this forum, and thanks to all the candidates that turned up and all of you that have been watching. This will be available on our YouTube channel, so you guys can pass it if you think, oh, that someone didn't see it, but they should see it, or circulate it to your networks. If you're a cultural organization, many cultural organizations supported us on this, so pass the word and let people take a look at it.
Thank you, Lucy, and thank you to your entire team there at New Yorkers for Culture and Arts. We all benefit from the work you all do.
Let's not forget to thank the technicians in the background pulling the strings. Thank you so much for making this so streamlined for all of us. Again, and as to David's point, thank you, Lucy, as always.
Absolutely. I want to thank our ASL interpreters. That is Andrea Leffy, who we see there, and Brandon Kazan-Maddox, who has been with us. I do want to thank our NY4CA New Yorkers for Culture and Arts team, Melanie Green, Lori Berg, Tara Sheena, Regine Peters, and Sam Ogilvy at SFG Productions. Please go to ny4ca.org to find out more. Take care, get engaged. This is an incredibly important election. We're going to turn over more of the city's government than we have in history. So who we get coming in is going to matter, and this is a critical time. So please pass the word, get out there, vote in our June primary coming right up. Thanks, everyone. Stay safe.